Hi everyone, it's Elaine Hamilton. So I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and he was asking me about non-duality. Like, what is it? What's the philosophy? So we started talking about the difference between where our consciousness comes from, and the main distinction with non-duality is the understanding that consciousness exists and everything arises out of that, including us and our appearance of being separate and unique and different with our own ways of thinking about things. And so then he asked me, well, then what do you think about the afterlife? What happens afterwards and what happens with reincarnation and what's your philosophy around that? And it was really interesting because I don't have one because it's just more belief. So anything that is a belief is seen as a belief. Now, that doesn't mean I don't hold beliefs, but I hold it all very lightly because I know it's just a belief. So why would I waste time thinking about a story that is essentially a belief system? My job, I feel at the moment for myself, is to investigate and let go of beliefs as I see them arising. And sometimes I catch them, and sometimes I don't catch them. And sometimes they are useful. The belief in planning for financial security is useful. The belief that I should keep a diary so that I know when I'm meeting people is useful. So there's also the discernment. It's not about just doing away with all sense of executive functioning. And I think this is where people get a bit worried. They're kind of like, oh, well, what happens to your life? Well, your life ticks along perfectly fine. The thing is the discernment around it of, are you adding more edifice, more scaffolding, more programming into your brain, your life, your beliefs, or are you continuing to free yourself from all of those beliefs that kind of lock you in place? And to be honest, a belief in an afterlife is one of those things that locks you into place. And that's not to say it's right or wrong or whatever. It's just to say we don't know. We don't know. And we're never going to know till we get there. So in my mind, there's just no point thinking about it. And there's no point trying to make ourselves feel better or worse or whatever. It's simply the understanding that it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to me now because right now I'm living my life and I'm not there yet. So as I was explaining this to him, I could feel like he was very quick and honest to say, that's terrifying. That I would not be happy. And of course, he's not talking about his whole self. He's talking about his mind is not happy, just as my mind wasn't happy with that explanation several years ago. So we all go through a kind of progression. And as we let go of certain beliefs, we realize that we don't explode, we don't collapse in a pool of fear, life goes on. Like life doesn't change that much, actually. The proof of that, the unfolding of that, is what gives us energy to keep going. So at no point am I saying, and I certainly wasn't saying to him, well, this is just the truth, deal with it, because the truth is known only when it's known. And so my truth is essentially whatever is arising in this moment is the only thing I can know for sure. That makes sense to me. So whatever is arising in this moment is the reality of this moment. And anything else is a belief system. Now, once you kind of go along with that, once you agree with it, and once you see the truth in it, that it is a valid description of your reality, then the belief systems and stories that you hold start to hold less and less power. Because what happens is you realize all of it is just belief systems. And you can get all het up about it and all angry and upset, or you can choose to hold it more lightly. So, this idea that we need to know what's going to happen in the afterlife. Like we need to know the or tell ourselves a story that feels believable in terms of what's going to happen next, I honestly think it adds more stress. I honestly think it adds more stress. The ability to let that go and the ability to simply be in the unknown, I promise you, is so much greater freedom because a little secret, not such a little secret, you know that you don't know. Hence, the level of anxiety and fear our mind holds. Like the mind is a fear mongering machine, if you haven't already noticed. It worries, it frets, it sees boogeymans in the shadows. That's its job in some respects, is to try and keep us safe. And it also has an incredibly incorrect strategic process, should I say, whereby it thinks that by making up stories, it will somehow soothe you. And it probably worked when you were a child, you were soothed. I know for certain people, religion holds a huge amount of comfort and soothing for them. I have nothing against that. Like if it works, great. The issue is if it's not working for you anymore and you start to feel a lot of doubt and a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety because these childhood beliefs that you held are no longer quite so convincing, or you're grappling and you're looking around for a better so-called belief system or story about what your future is going to hold. So then you start grabbing on to other religions or other practices or just other stories essentially that you feel will somehow stabilize you. So the mind thinks that by telling a good story about the future that can soothe you, you will somehow stabilize yourself. And if you notice it doesn't work, so I'm not telling you that you shouldn't do it. I'm just telling you to observe because essentially, when you have a belief system in anything, there is an innate underlying fear that it's going to be questioned. You're going to have to defend it. That's why there's such a lot of arguments online. People get really upset when you start poking at their religious beliefs or their political beliefs or their philosophical beliefs. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it was interesting. Again, this friend of mine was saying, so you don't believe in any afterlife? And actually, I don't not believe or believe in an afterlife. I just don't know. So I don't tend to put a lot of energy into thinking about it because there's no point. So the freedom of just living in the moment and what is arising right now. I mean, honestly, we have enough to worry about without going into the afterlife. Like that seems to me, it seems to be the least of our issues, frankly. So I think that this practice, I guess, if you call it that, of really starting to siphon through your thinking, what is what is your mind trying to grab at? And what would it be like for you to simply sit in the I don't know? Like what actually happens? Does the mind really have an issue with it? Or is it feeling that it needs to give you a story? Somehow it's been trained in, oh, I need to find a story, I need to find a belief to hang on to because I can't just have nothing. Well, I would suggest you test it out. Just test it out. Like, what happens if you just drop all philosophy, beliefs, anything, any kind of structure that holds you in some kind of definite future? This is what's going to happen. And when you die, this will happen and that will happen and yada, yada, yada. Maybe like we don't know, right? So maybe it's also a process, and this goes not only in the afterlife, but anything like what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in 10 years' time. What if you just allowed yourself to enjoy what is presenting itself to you right now and let the rest of it go? Because what starts to happen is you start to notice that life is always just a process of evolution, and you are one part of that. And it is very freeing and relaxing, not a problem at all when you don't try and make it into some kind of structure. When you start to really investigate what causes me stress, what causes me anxiety, it's the worry about too much structure, lack of structure, some structure, not quite structure. Because again, the mind knows ultimately it doesn't know shit. It doesn't know. It cannot predict the future. It really cannot. It cannot try and make you feel better because there's a part of you that knows the truth of this. And you know that this is all an arising and a story and a whatever. And sooner than more than later, it's going to be over. And I'm not saying that to make people scared. I'm saying that to give you the freedom to let go of all of these kind of the needing of the certainty. With the truth of the matter is that there's no certainty. And we know that. Like you go to bed at night, honestly, logically, you have no idea if you're going to wake up again the next morning. It is a miracle that we wake up every morning and remember a whole bunch of stuff about our past in the body, and we somehow or other seem to consciously arise. And there's a story that seems to have a timeline to it, and there's all these things. But then also in that, not all timelines are remembered. There are loads of things that you forget that just disappear out of your consciousness completely. Then maybe you look at a photo or you bump into a friend and they tell you a story and you're like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that. So we are already going through life with very little remembering and very little future. I mean, it's already like this. And yet there's enough that makes us feel there's a continuum. And I think, in a sense, there is a logic to that. It would be probably a bit more alarming to wake up every morning and just have zero memory or context of anything. Again, it's still possible to survive like that, but it would make life a lot more difficult. So I feel that this continuum, again, is very miraculous. It's incredible that this happens and we take advantage of it. But then not to go so extreme that you are feeling so locked in and so uncomfortable with certain belief systems that you are holding. Maybe they're held by your family, maybe by your culture, whatever, if it doesn't fit anymore. And so it's the starting to observe all of the tightness you hold around beliefs and whether or not you can experiment with holding it more lightly. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. You don't have to come to a conclusion. You hold it with an I don't know. I don't know. And the less you know, I think this is really the weird thing or the counterintuitive thing that, again, you can only experience this. Me telling you this doesn't make any difference, but you can experience this illogical truth that the less you hold on to and the less you think you know, and the more you don't know, the freer and more liberated you feel. I don't know why that happens. You no longer need to defend yourself. You no longer need to worry about what other people are thinking about you or others or whatever. You don't get all het up about the news. You don't, because you don't know. You don't know whether this is right and this is wrong. You don't know whether this is better for you or worse for you. You don't know. And because of that, there is a curiosity that starts to arise, a playfulness that starts to arise, and a more loose sense of spirit, right? Let's just go see. Let's just go play. Let's just see what happens. And that lightness creates a lot more joy and it creates a lot more fun. And life just becomes a lot more fun, no matter how difficult it is. And that also seems weird. It seems weird to me too, that I'm still going through as challenging things as I did, say, 10 years ago. And yet they feel so much more fun than if I was going through the same thing 10 years ago, which also seems weird that you'd be having fun while going through a challenge. But all I can say is that's my experience of it. And this is all about experience. None of this is about belief. It's about going out and investigating for yourself and seeing for yourself and having the courage to at least try it. Maybe try it with a belief that you're not really that particularly engaged with, and then work through into deeper and deeper ones and see what happens. I think that's enough prattling on for today. Covered a lot of ground there. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it and speak to you soon.